had just moved to the vibrant and bustling city of Lagos, Nigeria, to start a new job. As a young and eager graduate, I was excited to embark on this new chapter of my life. I found a small apartment in a rundown building in the heart of the city and thought it would be the perfect place to start my journey. However, little did I know that my new landlord would turn out to be my worst nightmare. The moment I met him, I knew there was something off about him. He had an evil smile that sent shivers down my spine. His eyes seemed to be constantly wandering, as if he was always looking for something to prey on. But I didn't think too much about it at first. I was just happy to have found a place to live in the bustling city. However, things started to take a turn for the worse as soon as I moved in. The first week was uneventful, except for the occasional creaking of the old building and the strange noises that seemed to come from the walls at night. I brushed it off as the quirks of an old building and tried to focus on settling into my new job. But then, I started to notice strange things happening around the apartment. My belongings would go missing and then reappear in odd places. My food would spoil overnight, despite being in the refrigerator. And worst of all, I would hear whispers and laughter coming from my closet at night. I tried to shrug it off as my imagination, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. One day, I bumped into one of my neighbors in the building and decided to ask her about the strange occurrences. She looked at me with a mix of pity and fear and told me that I should be careful around our landlord. She said that he was known in the neighborhood for being an evil and twisted man who took pleasure in tormenting his tenants. My blood ran cold as I realized that my instincts about him were right. But before I could do anything about it, things took a terrifying turn. I started to have nightmares every night. Nightmares of being trapped in the building with no way out. Nightmares of the walls closing in on me and the floor opening up beneath my feet. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart racing and my body trembling. But the most terrifying part was when I started to see him in my nightmares. His evil smile, his piercing eyes, and his sinister laughter would haunt me even in my sleep. And every time I woke up, I would feel his presence lingering in my room. I knew I had to get out of that building, but I was trapped. I couldn't afford to break my lease and find a new place to live. And every time I tried to confront my landlord about the strange occurrences, he would just give me that evil smile and tell me that I was imagining things. I was at my wit's end when I stumbled upon an old woman in the neighborhood who claimed to have knowledge of the supernatural. Desperate for answers, I went to her and told her about my experiences. She listened intently and then told me a horrifying story. According to her, the building I was living in was once a site for human sacrifices. The landlord was a powerful witch doctor who would sacrifice his tenants to gain more power, and the evil smile and twisted behavior were signs of his demonic possession. I was horrified and didn't want to believe her, but deep down, I knew she was right. I had to get out of that building before it was too late. With the help of the old woman, I performed a cleansing ritual in my apartment and then moved out as soon as I could. The nightmares stopped, the strange occurrences ceased, and I finally felt at peace, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that the evil landlord was still out there, preying on unsuspecting victims. I warned everyone I knew to stay away from that building, but I fear that my warning may not be enough to stop him. And every time I think about my experience, I can't help but shudder at the thought of what could have happened if I hadn't escaped that building. The evil landlord may still be out there, waiting for his next victim. And I can't help but wonder who will be the unfortunate tenant to fall into his trap next. For Zano, a town in the central region of Ghana known for its vibrant culture, bustling markets, and colorful streets. But in one particular neighborhood, there was a building that sent shivers down the spines of the locals. It was an old, dilapidated building with a faded sign that read, "For rent." Despite its eerie appearance, a group of friends, Tunde, Amina, Bisi, and Chike, decided to rent a spacious flat in the building. The landlord, Mr. Okoro, seemed like a kind and friendly man. He welcomed the friends with a warm smile and showed them around the flat. The rooms were spacious and the rent was surprisingly cheap. The friends thought they had hit the jackpot and eagerly signed the lease. The first few days in the flat were uneventful. The friends spent their time decorating and settling into their new home. But as the days went by, strange things started to happen. Tunde, who was a skeptic, brushed it off as their imagination. But Amina, who was sensitive to the supernatural, couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off about the building. It started with small things like a flickering light or a door slamming shut on its own. But then the friends started to hear strange noises in the middle of the night. Bisi woke up one night to find her wardrobe open and all her clothes scattered on the floor. Chiki's laptop, which was securely placed on the table, suddenly flew off and crashed onto the floor. The friends were terrified and they knew something was not right. One day, while Amina was walking down the hallway, she saw a shadowy figure dart into one of the rooms. She cautiously followed, but when she entered the room, there was no one there. She could feel a cold chill run down her spine, and she knew that there was a dark presence in the building. Amina confided in Tunde, who was a non-believer in the supernatural. But when he saw the fear in Amina's eyes, he started to pay more attention to the strange occurrences in the flat. He even searched for the building's history, but found nothing unusual. Tunde was convinced that there was a logical explanation for everything. But one night, things took a terrifying turn. Bisi woke up to find herself unable to move. She could feel something heavy holding her down, and she couldn't even scream for help. She could hear a voice whispering in her ear, and it chilled her to the bone. Bisi was convinced that she was being possessed by something evil. The friends were desperate for answers, so they decided to seek help from a local spiritualist. The spiritualist, Mama Alaka, told them that the building was cursed. She explained that the previous owner had dabbled in dark magic and used the building as a ritual ground. The spirits of the sacrificed victims were trapped in the building and they were seeking revenge. Mama Alak warned the friends to leave the building immediately, but they couldn't afford to break the lease. So she gave them a charm for protection and advised them to perform a cleansing ritual in the flat. The friends followed her instructions and hoped that it would put an end to the terrifying occurrences. But the spirits were not to be appeased so easily. The friends woke up one night to find the walls of the flat covered in strange symbols. They could hear eerie chants coming from all around them. The friends were terrified and they knew that they were in grave danger. They decided to confront Mr. Okoro, the landlord, about the building's dark history. But to their horror, they found him performing a ritual in one of the rooms. He had been using the building to summon evil spirits and gain power. The friends realized that they were pawns in his twisted game. Mr. Okoro turned to them with a sinister smile and revealed his true form. He was not human, but a demon in disguise. The friends were paralyzed with fear as the demon lunged towards them. But just as the demon was about to attack, Mama Alake burst into the room with a team of spiritual warriors. A fierce battle ensued, and the friends were caught in the crossfire. But with Mama Alak's help, the demon was banished and the building was cleansed of its dark energy. The friends were shaken, but they were relieved that the nightmare was finally over. They packed their bags and left the building, vowing never to return. As they walked away, they could feel a heavy weight lifted off their shoulders. The sun was shining, and the streets were bustling with life. But the friends knew that they would never forget the horrors they had experienced in that old, cursed building. In the bustling city of Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, stood a tall and imposing high-rise apartment complex. It was known as one of the most luxurious and sought-after places to live in the city. And for newlyweds, Alex and Nia, it seemed like the perfect place to start their new life together. The couple had just moved from a small village in the countryside to the big city in search of better job opportunities. They were excited to start this new chapter in their lives and were grateful to have found such a beautiful apartment in the heart of Dar es Salaam. Their landlord, Mr. Kofi, was a stern and serious man who had strict rules for all his tenants. He made it clear to Alex and Nia that there was to be no loud music, no parties, and no visitors after 10 p.m. At first, they thought it was just a way for Mr. Kofi to maintain order in the building. But as they settled into their new home, they began to notice some strange things. Every night, at exactly 10 p.m., they would hear loud noises coming from the apartment above them. It sounded like someone was moving furniture and banging on the walls. When they asked Mr. Kofi about it, he simply shrugged it off and said it must be the new tenants settling in. But as the days passed, the noises became more frequent and more disturbing. Alex and Nia couldn't shake off the feeling that something was not right in their building. They also noticed that Mr. Kofi would often disappear for hours at a time, and when he returned, he seemed agitated and flustered. One day, while Alex was out at work, Nia decided to do some investigating of her own. She went to the apartment above theirs and knocked on the door. When there was no answer, she decided to try the doorknob, and to her surprise, it was unlocked. She cautiously pushed the door open and stepped inside. The apartment was dark and musty, and there was a strange smell lingering in the air. Nia noticed that all the furniture was covered in white sheets, as if someone had just moved in. But what caught her attention the most was a large, locked door in the corner of the living room. Her curiosity got the best of her, and she went over to inspect the door. As she got closer, she could hear faint whispers coming from behind it. She reached out to touch the doorknob, and suddenly, someone grabbed her hand from the other side. Nia let out a blood-curdling scream and ran back to her apartment. When Alex came home later that evening, he found Nia trembling and pale, recounting her terrifying experience. They decided to confront Mr. Kofi and demand answers. But when they knocked on his door, there was no answer. They could hear strange chanting coming from inside, and they knew something was not right. Alex and Nia were determined to get to the bottom of this mystery. They went to the police, but they were dismissed and told not to cause any trouble. They were also warned to stay away from Mr. Kofi, as he was a powerful and influential man in the city. Feeling frustrated and scared, the couple decided to do some research on their own. They discovered that the apartment complex used to be a hospital many years ago, and there were rumors of patients being mistreated and experiments being conducted on them. It was also said that the head doctor of the hospital, Dr. Kofi, was involved in these heinous acts. As they delved deeper into their investigation, they found out that Mr. Kofi was, in fact, Dr. Kofi's son had inherited the building from his father. They also uncovered that the noises they heard every night were the tormented cries of the patients who had died in the hospital. Feeling a sense of dread and fear, Alex and Nia decided to leave the building and never look back. But as they were packing their things, they heard a knock on their door. It was Mr. Kofi, and he was holding a large knife in his hand. He had a sinister smile on his face as he told them that they could never leave the building alive. Alex and Naya managed to escape and ran out of the building, but they could feel Mr. Kofi's presence following them. They ran to the police station and told them everything they had uncovered. The police were skeptical at first, but when they went to investigate, they found Mr. Kofi's dead body in the locked apartment above theirs. It was later revealed that Mr. Kofi had been keeping the spirits of the tortured patients trapped in the building, using their energy for his own selfish desires. And when Alex and Nia disturbed his plans, he had tried to kill them to keep his secret safe. The couple never returned to the high-rise apartment complex, and it was eventually shut down. But the memory of their terrifying experience stayed with them forever. They realized that sometimes the scariest things are not the ones that can be seen, but the ones that lurk in the darkness, waiting to be uncovered.